Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. Thanks for tuning in for those folks out there. We're going to give it a few more minutes before we get fully started, but we'll do a quick round of introductions. My name's Taylor Winchester. I'm with Foundy. I've got my colleague Tim on the call here with us too, and yeah, we're grateful to have some of these amazing folks join us here, which we'll do a quick round of intros. But yeah, if you want to drop a little comment in the chat as to where you're tuning in from. We appreciate everybody taking the time to stop in and join us today. We hope that everybody's safe out there, especially under the light of things that are happening globally. See some folks from San Antonio and Nashville. Nice. While we're hearing from where you all are, let's hear about our guests and where they're from. So, Lisa, let's start with, or Lori, I'm sorry, let's start with you. We were talking about Lisa before the call, and I'm messing your name up, Lori. My apologies. So, Lori, let's hear a little bit about your background and maybe what you think, or what's a really important component of marketing for your role with Fest Forums.
Well, thank you. And I do answer to anything. Being a mom, a grandma is fine. Quickly, background, because it would take a long time. 20 years on the East Coast, Newport, Rhode Island. I was an attorney, transitioned into the festival industry, have been involved producing festivals for a good 10 years until I transitioned into educating for festivals. I run Fest Forums, I own Fest Forums. It is a conference intended to bring together festivals from all over North America, as well as Europe and South America, for networking, education, entertainment. We do it in Santa Barbara, New York, San Francisco, and I also provide a weekly newsletter. In terms of marketing, I really think it's important to know your brand, your vision, and from there you build out your marketing plan. And you can do that with a group of experts. A lot of different ways to do it. I know we'll be talking more about that, but I just wanted to give that quick intro.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that, Lori. And let's jump over to you, Matt. How about tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what you find important about marketing within your role?
Totally. Hey, everybody. I'm Matt Cohen. I'm out here in Los Angeles. I actually got my start in digital marketing with members and president founder of Foundy. We were a digital marketing agency called the Found Group back in 2010. I'm a musician, digital marketer. I started freelance consulting in about 2014 when my band got an opportunity to go on tour. So me personally, I've just had a unique perspective of being on the business side and creative side. I've been previous head of digital over at Loma Vista Recordings, and currently digital consulting with Concord Music Group, Motionless in White. I work with Don Felder of the Eagles. A lot of classic rock bands, a lot of metal bands, and yeah, as far as the digital marketing that I focus in, it's across the board for sure. I got my start in ECRM and social, now a lot of paid media, and I think digital marketing, it's what I find most important about it is that it's quantifiable. You can use digital marketing and its tools to hit goals, and goals are all over the place. And so, you get that goal and you start with it and you work backwards, and how can you use digital marketing to hit that goal? And then, yeah, you can quantify it. So.
Nope. You're muted.
I think you're muted.
You're muted, Taylor.
Can't hear
Still
you.
muted.
All right, sorry about that. I've got a dog in the background, so sometimes he goes crazy. I have to mute myself for everybody's sake here. But what I was saying was, yeah, thanks for that, Matt. I love the the emphasis on quantifying the data. That's really important. I think key, especially when you're talking about digital marketing. So, Micah, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what you find important about marketing.
I'm Micah Davidson. I'm the owner of Midwood Entertainment. We're based out of Charlotte, but we produce festivals and concert series all up and down the East Coast, and have 6 different venues that we also help operate up and down the East Coast. And marketing is the only way you get you have the opportunity to let people know exactly what's going on in the world. There's lots of components that Lori and Matt have just talked about that are certainly key for that, but it doesn't matter who you have on a stage. If you're not doing the right kind of marketing around it, ain't nobody showing up and nobody's being aware of it. So marketing is, in my opinion, probably the most important key to how you are establishing a brand and making sure people are aware of it, and how you tell your story.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we'd all on this call would all agree with that. And before we dive into everything, Tim, for the folks that may not be familiar with you, as I mentioned earlier, you're one of my colleagues here at Foundie. So give everybody a quick background and intro on your side of things as well.
Yeah, totally. So I'm Foundie's head of what we call head of advertising and media. I help make sure that the campaigns that are being set up on Foundie are being set up in the correct way. Helping our users optimize their campaigns so that they can get the best results and the performance that they want to see. I've been in digital marketing for about a decade now. I used to work with Matt Cohen, actually, at the Found Group back in the day. Digital marketing is just, it's I think, the most exciting part of marketing as we know it in the music industry. It's your opportunity to reach fans and get them to listen to music or buy tickets to a show, directly, where they consume media, when they're browsing their socials, when they're, doing anything online, shopping on Amazon, whatever it is. It's your opportunity to reach these fans and get them to do something. And it's something that, it's hasn't been possible until, the last, 15, 20 years. So it's really cool to see.
Yeah, thanks for that overview, Tim. Well, again, my name's Taylor, and I'm grateful to be here with all of you today. And before we, jump into some of the topics that we're going to talk about, as I mentioned before, obviously let us know where you're tuning in from, but also feel free to drop any questions or thoughts or comments that you have in the chat. We're going to try and keep it focused around, tour marketing for bands and event festival marketing for any of you event producers out there. But yeah, to get started with, let's kind of start talking, since a lot of the folks that are probably tuning in are either artists or maybe work on the artist side of things. So we'll kind of start talking about what's important. And Matt, I'll start with you. When you're thinking about pre-tour marketing, what are one of the things, or what would you consider to be the most important tools, I guess, to start integrating? I know there's a lot out there, but where would you start if you're really starting to think about an upcoming tour or upcoming festival season?
Yeah, well, I definitely think you'd want to start building your audience out in those markets. So first and foremost, you'd be surprised how many pages aren't pixeled yet. So I always, one of the first things I do is I run a web presence analysis, just a fancy way of saying a web audit. And, I go through everything. I make sure pixels are placed. Even within Foundie, I get accounts handed over to me, and I notice that they've been using Foundie for a while, but don't have all their Facebook pixels, and Twitter, TikTok, everyone's got a pixel now. So make sure they're all in Foundie and on the websites, on the splash pages, ready to go. Because oftentimes that first moment, whenever you do announce a tour or an album or anything, it probably is going to be one of the larger moments of the campaign. So, that initial setup is incredibly important. As far as what tools to use, definitely the typical social media platforms, and how to kind of start building audiences behind the scenes, without them knowing that even a tour is coming up. So if I know what markets I'm going to be touring in 3 months, I might start running some ads in those markets. Again, we know that strategically we're starting to introduce our music and who we are to those fans in those markets, but they think they're just discovering a band. And so you can start that journey a few months ahead of time, because the reality is concert tickets $10, $20 and up, and so they might not convert from just one Facebook, Foundie, any ad. So start that journey early, using socials, using your email database. Use tactics to grow that email database, but just start that initial touch point for the band, and it should be relatively passive, I would say. So they just, name recognition, song recognition, but just start that relationship with them pretty early.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And, for folks that may not know or may not have a real strong understanding of pixels, I'm going to pass that one over to Tim real quick. Will you tell folks that may not be familiar with kind of the overarching concept of what a pixel is and where it should be placed?
Yeah, so a pixel is essentially, as in the name itself, it's a tiny pixel that's embedded onto a web page that essentially can turn on or off. So the pixel fires and it turns on when somebody visits a web page that the pixel is attached to. And the purpose of the pixel is essentially, it's an advertising tool. It allows the marketer to build audiences of people who have visited specific web pages. And through that, give marketers and advertisers the ability to reach these audiences again a second time. What we call essentially remarketing and targeting. And it's a good way, as Matt was saying, it's a good way to really reach those audiences, your fans, those people who are interested in your music, who are interested in buying tickets. I think what Matt was saying earlier about, setting up an ad campaign before a tour starts, making sure that, those pixels fire, that you're building audiences of people who you're exposing to your music for the first time, and then following that up with a secondary round of advertising targeted at those people who saw your first ads. That sort of 1-2 punch in advertising is really effective. And we've seen, tons of studies over the years of how that tactic specifically can really increase your conversions. And whether it's to drive streams to music or, in the context of this, sell tickets to your show.
Yeah, great points. And there are a lot of tools out there in addition to placing a pixel on your website. If you're marketing a tour, and maybe you're beyond the step that Matt was talking about from a standpoint of really starting to build the engagement before, and now you're already moved on to actually announcing that tour or announcing that upcoming event. With Foundy specifically, our link shortener tools allow pixels fire when somebody clicks those links. So if you're promoting a show that maybe you're driving traffic to a Ticketmaster or Eventbrite or whatever that point of sale is, and you don't have your pixels placed on that website, by using a Foundy short link, you can actually fire those pixels in that process without them having to go to your website before going to that point of purchase. And Jesse had a good question I'm seeing here, and it looks like Matt answered it. But yeah, I think to add to that would be just making sure, I think Matt, you mentioned it already, but your first touch point, you don't necessarily want it to be salesy. If you can just start to build that awareness and engagement without necessarily asking somebody to make a purchase decision, that's a great way to just kind of start to get them into that funnel and start to get them to engage with you before you actually ask them to make that purchase, whether that's your album, your music, or an actual ticket to a show. And speaking of, I think some of the points you made, Matt, were geared towards social media. So I'm going to ask you, Micah, when you're working with artists, or, you book a lot of artists for both festivals and venues, when you're announcing shows, what's most important to you as far as using maybe social media, or, what are you looking for as far as what you want to see artists doing to make sure that they're holding up their end of the bargain for promoting that upcoming event that you're working on?
Well, I think it differs depending on certainly if you're in a venue or if you're at a festival, obviously. The reality is certainly an aspect of coordination, making sure that all parties are actually working together towards the same goal. If we have an announced date, making sure that every party is actually coordinated and all the assets are aligned correctly and everybody is willing to announce at the exact time. It's a giant pain in the ass when you set a plan in motion, and obviously, some parties go ahead and make that announcement and not all parties do. So you get a lag. There's sometimes a benefit from that lag of not everybody doing it in the name, because it keeps that there's a momentum that you can have by having some multiple announcements. But obviously the idea is to have everybody announce at the same time. So I always like to make sure that everything is coordinated. For venues, for festivals, you want the same coordination, but similar to what Matt was talking about earlier about, y'all were both sort of talking about, don't always start with a sales pitch, so to speak. We're not trying to just engage you. I think there's a larger story to tell, whether you're a band on the band side, or if you're a festival where you can do a lot of teasing of the event and a lot of just getting community engagement going on with the event before you even start talking about a lineup. So I think, and I bring that up from a standpoint of coordinating the actual lineup release, because you may want to just say, hey, don't forget everyone, the festival is happening on these dates. You just do like a save a date, or we're going to be announcing the lineup on this date, or whatever. You're telling a story that helps continue to coordinate engagement, with a fan base and stuff like that. And then even after after the lineup is announced, I think you continue to tell that story by releasing individual graphics of those specific artists and things like that on a daily basis. So I think it still goes back to making sure that everything's coordinated. But fundamentally you still have a story to tell, and that story is your brand, but building that to make it all cohesive so everybody's on the same page on what that story is.
Yeah, I think those are great points. I mean, we've talked about it in past webinars when Tim's specifically talking about recorded music and the promotions of that. And a lot of, I think this speaks a little bit to what Matt's talking about prior to the actual announce of whatever the event or tour might be. If you can use these tools to start to build that audience in a standpoint of creating community, creating people engaging with it and wanting to tell their friends. And, thinking about that, I know, Lori, you and I have talked a little bit about how a lot of times, you promote more so B2B when you're talking about some of your conference and event promotions. But I think you mentioned to me one of the most important factors is really word of mouth and getting your consumers or your clients or your customers engaged enough to want to go tell their friends or to kind of share that. So I think that's fair to say that should be something that musicians should focus on too. So, what do you use when you're thinking about trying to really engage your kind of key or core constituents and getting them to spread that message for you?
Well, part of marketing, of course, is what you do post, and the use of surveys I found to be extremely useful. Again, I do have a B2B business, so some of these strategies are slightly different from what you do when you're consumer facing. But I create ambassadors out of everybody who is speaking, sponsoring, playing, attending. I can do it through paid incentives. I can do it through creating the assets for them and letting them push it out through their socials. I can do it through publicity. I can do through paid socials, SEOs. I can use all the traditional digital marketing strategies, but nothing beats the actual word of mouth. And that's what our surveys have ascertained, that coming to this conference is really the way for people to promote the event further. And so I use that as one of our chief marketing tools, quite frankly, is creating incentives around our actual attendees. And I'm happy to invite people to come complimentary who cannot afford to pay, just so that they can have the experience, one, of being there, which I think is important, and two, of helping to continue to grow and promote it. Because what drives our conference are our sponsors. And if they don't have buyers, festivals there, then I don't have a conference. So I wrap the whole strategy together.
Yeah, those are great points. I think Matt mentioned it here in the chat. If you're there's a couple of angles on that. I think thinking about surveys, I've seen a lot of acts really post, where do you want to see us play? And that may be that 3-month period. They may already have their tour booked, but they may be 3 months out from announcing it or a month out from announcing it. But that's kind of warming up that audience, getting people that are already their followers to engage. And when if they're seeing that content and they're responding, and that could be an IG story, answer the question, where do you want to see us play, or on Facebook and see all those comments coming in. That's a good way to start to build that engagement, so that when you're a week or 2 or 3 weeks out from announcing, that's a touch point that didn't have to necessarily ask for them to pay for anything, but it is something that gets them engaging. Tim, do you have any kind of points to add on that as far as like surveys or ways to get fans to engage and also spread that message for you?
Yeah, I actually had a question. Lori, that was a really good point. Your point about ambassadors. I think when we're talking about the B2C sort of promotion that artists do, we often talk about activating and engaging super fans, which we consider to be our ambassadors, those people who are going to champion your message, tell their friends about the show, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I wanted to ask, Matt, as a musician and digital marketing professional, as well as Micah, what tactics do you guys use to sort of engage these super fans to get people to talk about your event?
I can go first. I mean,
Go ahead.
to get the fans activated, it could be contesting. Really to activate a fan to do something, there's probably going to be some type of incentive involved. So there's tools out there like Tone Den or pre-save campaigns, which you can use a Foundy page to use. Oftentimes, we do pre-save for a chance to win this, or pre-save for just a chance to do anything, and then you also collect those emails, and you can use those emails as the submission for entry. So
I think there's
Yeah.
other tools. Sorry.
I was
Go
just going to
ahead.
say, to add to that, when you talk about pre-sage or kind of, it's kind of like a social unlock, which Foundy has a landing page tool for that. If you create a social unlock, you can give your fan or your customer a special piece of content. If they pre-save, as Matt was saying, or something, you know, so that's another way to kind of engage them without necessarily asking for a survey per se. But go ahead, Mike. I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's good. So, I mean, figuring out how to leverage all of the different tools obviously together certainly makes a difference, but there's also things that are like certain ticketing platforms. When we're talking about giving incentives, Tixer is a platform that we use for some of our events, and they have a really wonderful reward program where if you're a ticket buyer and you sign up for the reward program, you get you have the ability to now become a true event ambassador or a venue ambassador, and you help market a show by literally just telling people, and you give them a special code that gives somebody the ability to go buy their ticket. And as long as they use your code, then you start getting a little bit of money back on the ticket that you purchased for that thing. And so I think it goes down to, you know, there's engagement opportunities everywhere, you know, whether you were literally walking down the street, you know, and it's the people you surround yourself with, or it's the restaurants you eat at, or whatever. Every opportunity period is a marketing opportunity. Every conversation you have is an opportunity to learn, you know, and you need to be, if you really want to understand marketing on some level, you have to start thinking about it on a global level of how does it not just affect, we're all talking about the music industry for sure here, but you almost have to see the aspect of marketing with everything. I've been talking a lot this week about there was an ad firm a marketing firm in Charlotte years ago, even before I really truly became a professional in the industry, and they were doing a marketing test campaign in the market, and they were advertising a water brand called Outhouse Springs, which is by far the worst, most ridiculous name, obviously, but it was recycled bottled water called Outhouse Springs, and their logo was an outhouse. And there were billboards all over town that literally said, "I see you," and then it was an outhouse. Like, you know, it was like, I'm never going to drink this stuff. Clearly, it's recycled water, like it's awful. But all of that is, you know, yes, it's a billboard, it's this, that, whatever, but it's just unique marketing, right? So every opportunity is a marketing situation. So how do you talk to people? How do you think about how you engage your fan base? How do you tell your story? There's another obviously wonderful way to do it is starting groups in general through all the different social media platforms. Though they're not a festival that we help produce, Floyd Fest is probably one of the best fan base, you know, fan group marketing organizations I've seen in God knows how long. I think I get a post 3 or 4 times a day from that group, which is just people who go to the festival, and they're all just talking about different things. Like, you know, again, how do you tell your story? How do you tell your brand? How can you open up every aspect of engagement into every opportunity so that people are constantly talking about you?
And just to add on to that, I have a very robust newsletter, and I'm always looking at it from the point of view of the story in the eyes of the reader. What is going to be most helpful to my audience of festival producers? What do you guys need to hear about? And so the content is a blend of all of those things, and I've been able to grow it to about 23,000. And you have to know how complicated it is, because you have to be very careful. And that's one of the things about new technology. There's so much more in data analytics, and there's so much more we have to be careful about. So it's that push-pull we have going on with what's going on with cookies and Facebook and all the new regulations. But with the newsletter, you can really reach directly to your customer, to your audience, and connect with them on a much more personal level, and really tailor the messaging with content that they want to read.
That's how I feel. Sorry, that's how I feel about Bands in Town a little bit also, which is, I know is a tool that Foundy has the ability to do like one campaign through all of these different resources, you know, which is what makes Foundy a really great tool. And usually you can save money by using Foundy and so on by doing it. But Bands in Town is a resource that I have really leaned into over the past few years, because, and it's weird because I feel like Bands in Town is sort of like a redheaded stepchild that nobody really in the industry talks about openly, but they're there, and they're this really great tool because you can literally run an ad campaign to actual fans of a specific artist, and then obviously look, you know, if you happen to like this artist or whatever. And I find that it's not talked about enough, and it's not the only thing I lean on, certainly, but it's something that is real. As if you're a buyer and you're trying to figure out, maybe I'm not familiar with this artist. Certainly you can look at Spotify and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and so on. But bands in town to me is something that is definitely something that people should be paying to, because they're the actual, like, I can send an email to this exact fan base, in that region. And it's a really great tool.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that, Micah. We obviously, you and I've worked together in the past on things, and I know Matt and I've talked about the value of using bands in town. And a lot of artists use bands in town too, because that's where they embed on their website their tour calendars, tour schedule. A thing to think about there is utilizing the Foundy short links in your bands in town. If you're putting an e-blast out and you're paying for a campaign on bands in town, and you're an artist and you're targeting similar fans, when you build that email list, or I'm sorry, when you build the actual content, the copy that's going into that email, you can use Foundy short links so that you can not only track the where people are going and what links they're clicking, but that's building out that remarketing audience for you as well. I haven't tried this, so I'm not 100% sure that this will actually work, but I think you could actually, when you're building out an event on bands in town side, you put your ticket link in. So if it's an Eventbrite link or whatever, Tixer or whatever, you could actually short link that through Foundy, just like you'd be using that on social media posts. But then also put that in your bands in town ticket link, so that way when people click it, it's sending them to the ticket point of purchase. But again, it's just all of these steps, they come together to be that cohesive strategy, so that it's helping you build out that audience on Foundy side. And if you import those other social media pixels into Foundy, it's also helping you build that marketing audience on your social side as well. And to go back, Lori, to your point about email and building out your kind of newsletter database, the important thing that I heard out of there is content is really crucial in that, and thinking about what your customer or your fan or whomever, what are they looking for? What are they thinking about? What do they want to engage with? So I think that's a good segue to kind of move into some content ideas when you're talking about promoting an upcoming tour or upcoming event. So Matt, I know you had some great insight on this. So do you want to share with us kind of, I think you kind of had like a step by step, like if you're talking about starting 3 months out and then maybe you just announce a tour, like what would be kind of that, that funnel of actions or funnel of content strategy on your end?
Yeah, I think you just got to think of yourself as the consumer, right? If I see one band name on Instagram or anywhere, a banner ad, it might not mean anything to me yet. It's just a band name, and I haven't heard the music, I haven't heard anything. So I think it's the music industry. So come out of the gates with some music. Introduce who you are. 15-30-second clips is a great digestible way to get people engaging with your clips. It's not a huge commitment for them to sit down and listen to it and watch it. And with good targeting, hopefully they'll sit down and listen to it. And so think about the copy, how it relates to them. But I like to design, if it's a 3 to 4 phase, maybe it's a few months early. It's, hey, we're a band name. This is our new song. Check it out. With the copy, you could tailor it to however the band is, but obviously some people do say for fans of, to really kind of make that connection, like, oh yeah, I like all those bands. It's just really how markety you want to be in your tone. But yeah, so maybe it's phase 1. Hey, we're a band name. Here's our new song. You collect remarketing. You get a level of engagement off that one. Week 2, maybe you serve them a music video. So again, in that journey, it's in their shoes, it's, oh wow, I just heard of that band last week, I liked that song. Oh wow, now they have a new music video out. And then maybe 3 weeks later, it's an album announcement, and at that point the user saying, wow, this band's been in front of me. Like, they don't know that we're really like intentionally doing this, but this band is suddenly becoming super relevant to them. And then maybe it's that 4th touch point, then it's the concert tickets. Like, wow, I just found out about this band, I liked their song, their video was awesome, and now they're coming to my city and they're playing at my favorite local venue or large venue. And again, you've just created that was just an example of 4 touch points, but you've just literally taken that person who's never heard of you by the hand, guided them through content, and it's safe to assume that after a few touch points, and if they've been engaging throughout the way, they're more likely to buy that concert ticket. So yeah, again, it's put yourself in the consumer's position. And I like to think of it as taking someone from a passive fan, holding them by the hand and guiding them to super fandom until they're ready to convert, whether it's a ticket, a merch sale, listen to your album. Because also, even if it's a stream, you know, an hour of someone's time is an hour of someone's time. So if you want them to listen to your album, you should start that emotional connection with them through various touch points, essentially, and just guide them.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I'm thinking specifically about like tour marketing or event marketing. What I've seen to be successful is, especially if you're looking at those multiple touch points, you know, starting with a video of your music or a stream or whatever it is in the ad funnel. But then as you're getting closer to the event, maybe it's instead of just like that tour promo video or that video that's promoting your music in general, the next step would be actually more personalized, like, you know, if I'm playing New York, hey, New York, can't wait to see you guys. I'm going to be there on whatever day and date that is. And then what is real, I found that to be valuable, not only from the artist and creator perspective, but if you're a venue or if you're, you know, you're an artist playing a venue and you want that venue to push your show, they're, you know, using the ad mat or the tour marketing materials is only going to be utilized to so many degrees. So if you give multiple pieces of content, that's going to be, you know, offer more value to that promoter. And then it gives them more reason to actually keep posting about your show because it's not the same piece of content over and over.
I completely agree. And I think about this with press and promoters, you know, you want to give them as much as you can for them to be able to do their jobs as good as they can. You know, as digital marketers too, sometimes our jobs are only as good as, you know, the content provided, or if it's in the scope of work that we're creating. But, you know, I can't run ads if I don't have assets, right? So yeah. And I always like to leave, if I'm giving the press promoters as much as possible, it leaves little room for excuses, really. You know, it leaves them little room to say, well, I told you I needed that, you know, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, no, let's give you everything you need. So they have all the tools they need to do their job.
Yeah.
I would also add on top of that, you know, we in this conversation, I think a lot in the industry, it's always like, all right, band promoter needs these things, promoter band needs these things, you know, whatever it is, so on and so on. I think we need to start thinking about, or we need to really lean into the fact that everything we're doing in this industry is a partnership, right? We're all one team. And if you are producing a show, you want that show to be as successful for the artist as possible. And the artist should want it to be as successful as possible for the promoter, and as great of an experience for the fans and those kind of things. So you have to think about all of that, and everyone needs to lean into that partnership. If I, as a promoter, am going to take a chance in having your artist on my festival or your artist in my venue or whatever, that means I'm also making sure that I don't have somebody else, right? Mm-hmm. So there has to be a collaboration from the beginning to the end of the conversation. As a promoter, I'm spending money on you. What am I getting back in return? It's an investment, you know? And I think we need to look at those things as true partnerships where we're all in this together. If I reach out to you, because I want to, if you give, the more assets you give me, the more I'll post it, in which case we're all in this together and we're all winning. If I'm reaching out to you as the promoter of the festival or the venue, and I'm like, hey, can you give us this content, or can you help us make this announcement or whatever, and you're not, or even if ticket sales aren't going as well, you know, there's been a couple of occasions where I've worked with an artist where ticket sales weren't going great, and we offered 10 different solutions. And every single time the management of that artist came back and said, we don't really like those, but they didn't offer up any other options either. So what, you know, where's that partnership, you know, actually leading to? I haven't done a show with that particular artist ever since then, because what's the point, you know, no matter how successful they are, you know? So I think we should also be leaning into that partnership aspect of this. Once we all engage into that conversation, we're all one team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great points. And you know, going back a little bit to Matt, you were mentioning the video clips. So if you're doing a tour and you kind of create a kind of master tour video to promote that you can share with all the promoters, but then you're kind of thinking that next step in a more personalized. I know sometimes as artists, we are you know, a bit particular about what content we want to post directly on our feeds, because we want our Instagram grid to look a certain way. And that's fair. You know, I totally understand that there's some artistic integrity in that, but to think about having a paid strategy that goes along with that, you can create unique videos and just use them in campaigns that are paid for, so that people see it in their feed. But if they go to your actual Instagram bio or like page or whatever, it's not going to show up in the grid, if that makes sense. So, thinking about ways to use content outside of just, oh, am I going to post it on TikTok or am I going to post it right on my Instagram feed? Sometimes there's value in actually using content that isn't directly on the feed, but it's still driving traffic back over there. So I think that's something to consider as well. And I've seen a huge, I've also had artists that are, or management companies that say that their artists are reluctant to make, the selfie video. And I mean, those, sometimes the less polished, less, I won't say less clean, but like, you don't need it to be a highly produced video to be successful. Sometimes the ones that just look like they were made with their phone pop out and stick out more, and people feel more like they can connect directly with you as an artist because it's just you and a phone, as opposed to this highly produced video that you spent 20 grand on or whatever. So, being creative and thinking about that as a marketing tool is something I think that a lot of times, especially artists that get to a certain level, they just don't feel like they need to do that, but they don't necessarily think about that partnership aspect or that value that the promoter gets out of that as well.
Most definitely. I even saw a band and I thought this is pretty clever. It's probably a band that didn't want to do the selfie video. And so they're like, how can we do this with no budget? So they actually filmed themselves on a ring cam where they walked up to the ring cam and they're like, Los Angeles, yeah, I'm coming to the Fonda. And I thought that was pretty creative.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I also wanted to mention that you were talking about press. So if you're an artist that's going after press for an upcoming tour or even a release, there's a really cool feature in Foundy that a lot of times we don't necessarily highlight. But there's essentially, you can take an embed, so whether that's a YouTube or a Spotify player of that new single release or that album, or if it's an event, if you're a festival, it could be an actual playlist for all of the artists that are playing on your festival. And if you're going out after press, you can actually take that embed code from Spotify or from YouTube and drop it into your Foundy platform, create a basically the same embed, but it then has your Foundy pixel in it. So then if you go get placement on, Rolling Stone or whatever media outlet you get, and they drop that Spotify playlist in to help you promote, or that video that is promoting the lineup announce or the tour dates or whatever it is, every time that video gets played on that page, that actually fires your pixel from Foundy. So you're able to not only remarket people that maybe never made it over to your website, but they just happen to read that news piece, but you can also see the insights and, see how good that press did for you and of like actually engaging with that player on that piece of news. So that's something that sometimes gets lost because Foundy has a lot of tools and features.
I would say that's like a secret weapon of Foundy that I've even underutilized and need to utilize more. That's legit.
Yeah. Well, shifting back over, thinking about like still content strategy. I know, Micah, sometimes when I've worked with you in the past, there's been some challenges to getting artists to actually talk about events. So as an event promoter, do you kind of have like a rule of thumb of what your expectations would be as far as when a show gets announced or when a tour gets announced or festival? Like, what are you hoping to see from that artist in a good partnership kind of scenario?
Well, kind of going back to, I guess I, to some extent, answered that question a little bit early, I guess, in my last little rant. But like I said, we're all in this together. If we've agreed to do whatever, a festival play, a festival play, a club show, whatever it might be, the reality is like I said, it's. I don't know how many people will like me saying this or not, but I'm going to take the emotion out of the industry for a minute. The reality is that festivals, venues, bands, so on and so on, everything is a product. We're talking about marketing, right? Everything is a product. There's a consumer transaction that has to do with everything that we're talking about, whether it be just actual engagement or it be a financial transaction and so on. So when I'm telling my story as my brand, my festival, this is the lineup we are curating. There's a reason why I chose you as an artist versus why I chose a different artist this year or whatever, or why I didn't choose an artist. And it has nothing to do with whether I like that artist or don't like that artist. It has more to do with, again, how are things shaping up? What am I curating? And so if I am trying to tell a story and I've asked you to be part of that story, then I expect you to want it, to be excited about that and lean in on that partnership as well. So if we have an announced plan, we expect people to stick to it. If they don't have, I absolutely 100% keep a database of artists who do not comply with those things. And it's different, of course, like if we say, here's what our announced target date is, and you tell us, well, here's some challenges we have with that, and you've communicated those things up front, no problem. We can bob and weave all we need to with that situations. But when you've said, yeah, we're totally fine, or you're confirmed and you don't communicate at all when we're trying to do that announcement, that just goes to show what level of a good partner in this industry you're going to be. And again, I hate to be all business on that situation, but we're talking about marketing, and marketing at the end of the day is about product, and a brand. And we're all trying to tell a story, a unique story. And whether it's, hey, look, this is the coffee I got on my way to the studio because I'm recording this song that's coming out in 2 weeks or whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's still all marketing, is still telling a story. And so we're all in it together. I can't stress that enough. And yeah, like, if we stick to it, if we have a plan in place, let's stick to it.
Cool. Thanks for that. I just know sometimes from an artist perspective, they like to hear, or management or label perspective, they like to hear what buyers and promoters are looking for. So I appreciate that insight. Let's shift a little bit in talking about when we're talking about marketing events and festivals and touring. Let's talk a little bit about paid ad strategy. Matt, I know you've done a lot of kind of tour campaigns and paid campaigns, both on the recorded side and on tour and events. But when you're thinking about kind of your overall strategy, if you're an artist or a management company or a label that has an artist going out on tour, what are you thinking about as far as ways that you can supplement those efforts of promotion with paid strategy and paid campaigns?
I think most definitely, it should be a concerted effort. So if they're posting, I want to work with the social team usually. And so, always make sure that the language is, cohesive and across the board. So if they're talking about a song, maybe our ads at that point will be the song. I think I'm understanding your question, but
yeah, well, I think, yeah, let me guide you a little better. So thinking
Yeah.
about when you have maybe a show announced, or in a lot of cases, we're talking about bands that might be promoting an upcoming tour. And obviously a lot of times, I guess the promoters maybe controlled those show budgets. But if you're on the band side or the artist side, I know I've thought about it as like knowing about when an on sale happens. Usually what I see happen in the industry is you'll have a peak of ticket sales right out of the gate. And then a lot of times it tails off for a little while. And then you get, 10, 14 days out from the actual date, we'll start to see the uptick in those ticket sales. So if you're not on the promotion side, you're not the marketer at the venue or at the festival, are there any strategies that you might have? I mean, me thinking about it, I would say, okay, well, when I'm announcing all these upcoming tour dates, I'm going to run that tour promo video as a paid strategy in each of those markets. And, in addition to, obviously, social media is super important, but nowadays a lot of people are kind of transitioning off of certain social media apps. So are there ways that you think about touching them with display banners or, YouTube video, other kind of creative tools to make sure that people know without relying on that promoter to promote that show strictly for you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, most definitely. I think again, it's that we know that we're coming to play that market in several months. Just, I do tie it back to just starting that conversation early with them, and just guiding them along the way. Really, if I'm creating a digital advertising budget, I often come out of the gates relatively strong, like cast as large of a net as possible, get an initial read of who's engaging, where are they, how much is that enough in our remarketing audience, and then let it simmer. And then as the event gets closer, vamp it back up, as you said.
So thinking about that a little bit, I don't know if Tim, if you're still there, I think we've had some connectivity issues here. Welcome back, Lori. But Tim, if you're there and can jump on, do you have any thoughts on ways to maybe think about that multi-step process from a funnel perspective of ways to reach new fans or new potential fans, and then kind of get them into that funnel so that you can have that multiple touch point buyer journey or fan journey? I think we lost him. I'll speak to what I have in mind. So I'm thinking about, I've used Facebook and Instagram and TikTok even, from an ad strategy standpoint, but also looking at ways to maybe branch outside of that and trying to kind of think about prospecting new potential fans in markets. And something I've seen work recently is actually the HTML5 banner ads in Foundy as that top of funnel kind of touch point. So if you have a tour promo video for the next 10 dates coming up and you can market and put a campaign together on the display side in Foundy, targeting those 10 different markets with that YouTube video embed. Anytime somebody clicks that, the cool thing about that versus maybe a YouTube video ad or a Facebook video ad is that the average watch time on those HTML5 ads is 54 seconds. So if somebody's on a website, sees this banner ad with a YouTube player in it, and it has, Jesse DeCanto or the Pinkerton Raid, I think that's Jesse's band name, the Pinkerton Raid, and then, coming to a town near you, and they click on that, that's a good way to actually engage for the first time of people being able to experience your music and listen to that full video clip without ever having to click off of it. And you're not kind of putting that video in a stream of a lot of other stuff on a Facebook feed or Instagram feed. And then if they don't even leave that page, but they click play, the cool thing about it is, again, that triggers that pixel so that then you can start to remarket to them. And the thing that I like about that is like looking at it as a different way, as opposed to putting that content maybe on social or in conjunction with putting that content on social. What this is doing is allowing people to engage with your content on, some of these premium music sites that we have access to. And I like to think about that when we talk about content page strategy. How do you get really strategic and also, work in quality content along that way? And so that's kind of where I was going with it, especially thinking right with the announce, you can kind of make a bigger splash. How many impressions can you get for your budget, and where's that money best spent before you start working on those next funnel phases, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
Well,
Hey, Taylor. Sorry,
Are you back, Tim?
I'm back. My connection isn't great right now, so hence the camera off. And sorry to cut you off, Lori. But yeah, just to add to that really quickly, echoing what Micah and Matt and Lori have been saying. It's all about those multiple touch points, right? That's just going to get fans to ultimately pull the trigger on a ticket. It's about reaching those fans, creating that awareness, and hitting them with advertising and messaging once, twice, ramping up that frequency as we get closer to the date of show. That's what's going to push people over the edge and convince them like, wow, I need to go to the show. I need to buy a ticket. And one of the benefits of using Foundy as a platform is, with the low CPMs and low CPCs that we were able to get, on a lot of these premium sites, Foundy really is an amazing tool to just spread that awareness, to cast that net really wide with that first round of advertising, to just, to shoot that shotgun and see who is going to engage first, to see, who's going to be interested, to showcase your music, showcase the lineup. And then, after we have those marketing pixels firing, after we build those audiences, we can then, again, follow up with these people with the second, third round of advertising. And again, we've seen this tactic, work really well time and time again. But it's really, when it comes to Foundy, it's your ability to spread that message far and wide for very cheap. That's what makes it so effective.
Cool. Thanks for that, Tim. I just want to remind everybody that's tuning in, we're getting close to the top of the hour here. So if you do have any other questions or thoughts or things you want us to chime in on, please don't hesitate to drop a note or a question in the chat. While we're waiting to see if anybody has any of those, let's shift to thinking about like actually activating on site and engaging folks. And Lori, I know you mentioned having some sponsorships be a key component in your event planning and success of your event. So, what are ways that you find value in a standpoint of actually engaging with the audience on site, activating them, and obviously showing value in case you are selling sponsorships?
Well, I like Micah said all along, it's really about your story, your brand, and engaging them. So marketing is just another way of saying, I'm telling you my story. And so you can do that through a number of different ways, through our hospitality, through our signage, through our digital signage, again, through talking to your guests while they're there. What are the things that you like about what we're doing? What don't you like about what we're doing? Doing instant surveys at the time, using the sponsors to activate their products and services online, to see in real time, to see who they're connecting with, making sure that you're connecting with everybody who's there. There's no substitute for that. So yes, I do like to make sure that our brand is being projected in a positive light, but also making sure that the brands are also getting a good interaction. And I'm very much about making sure that it's real, it's authentic. It's an overused term, but to me, it's really important that everybody has a purpose for being there, and that their purpose for being there, those needs are being met. And that requires a human touch, quite frankly, and then a team to activate that, to making sure that those needs are all being met. So it's not so much digital, it's just a real-time experience, and then making sure you're following up with them. But I did want to say one of the quick things about when you're coming out of the gate with your sales, you really want to understand where you're putting your energy. If you're doing paid media, which I think there's nothing stronger than video, and that's been shown time and time again, that you're really going after the right audience. My audience happens to be LinkedIn, strangely enough, right? Because I'm B2B. If you are gearing up for a festival with a younger demographic, obviously you're looking at TikTok. They're not going to be on Facebook anymore. So I think it's really important that you know who your audience is and who you should be targeting when you're doing that as well.
Yeah, all great points. And going back to kind of thinking about on-site activation and things that you can do to not only engage that crowd. If you're a touring artist, I went to a show recently, and literally, like, before I think I even left the show, I received an email. This was at a performing arts venue, and I received an email from the president of the performing arts. Of course, it was a blasted email that everybody that attended the show got, but I hadn't even walked out the door, I don't think, and I'd already received an email with a link to a survey to tell them how the customer experience was. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're an artist, you don't necessarily have that data from an email standpoint because you didn't own the ticketing. But what you could do with the Foundy tool is actually we have the QR code creator. You could drop that on a poster that sits at your merch table with all of your price points, and you could have some type of call to action. Scan here, sign up for our email to receive 10% off our merch store or something like that. And then immediately following the show, you could follow up with an email saying, hey, what did you think of the show tonight? Or you could offer them some type of discount at the end of the tour on all the merch that's left over. Matt, I don't know if you were involved in this, but Jason was telling me about a use case scenario of a QR code that back in the Found Group days that they worked with a festival, and they threw this QR code up on the screen. And were you involved with that campaign as well?
Yeah, was this his initial Bluetooth technology where they blasted it all out?
Yeah.
QR codes have had like the best comeback of all time within the last few years. They tried 10 years ago, and now they're awesome.
Yeah.
And well, Twitter's the other place that's come back.
Yeah.
Where was that, Lori? I'm sorry.
Twitter.
Oh, Twitter. Yeah.
Made a huge resurgence.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I remember Jason telling me that story with the QR code. And what was so cool about it is that the call to action, I think, was that same thing. It's like scan it. I think literally it said scan this shit. And it was up on the screen. So people were scanning it. And then they automatically, by scanning it, they put their email in and got a discount at the merch booth. So then they immediately would go over to the merch booth and use that. Well, then following the festival, like the Sunday or Monday following the festival, they sent a mass email out to everybody that either didn't use the code or didn't use the discount, and said, hey, we've got this limited edition merch online. And they did like 40 grand in revenue just off of that e-blast from a follow-up campaign, And so thinking about how, I've been to shows, Micah, there was that Green Sky Bluegrass show in Beach Mountain. I didn't get a poster or a shirt in time, and they sold out. But then I noticed at the end of the tour, they were selling stuff online again. So those are ways that you could really utilize something on site to capture an audience, and then obviously be able to really stay engaging with them after you've left the venue or finished that tour.
I might have a poster at the house for you. I can't remember.
Okay, thanks.
What I was going to say is on the event on site with our vendors, which you I'm sure can do with your ticket holders, is we already say to them, if you sign up today before you leave for next year, you're getting a discount. And so that's a great way to, they're so excited about what's going on. And I'll say, I'm not going to bill you for 6 months, but I want you to sign this, kind of letter of intent. And they're so caught up in the moment that, it's a great way for us to rebook right on site.
I'd go one step past that. And because we do this on a couple of our events where on the Sunday, let's say if it's a 1-day event, sometimes it can be a little harder, but especially if it's a weekend long festival, on the Sunday of the festival, we offer people to be able to buy a ticket to next year's festival only if they're at the festival right now. They can go ahead and buy a ticket to next year's festival at a discount. And they're the only, we don't put it out to the masses. We only give it to people who come to the festival. So it's not only opportunity for us to get revenue, but it's also more incentive for people to actually want to come to the festival because they know they can get a discount. So again, it's looking at that forward thinking. Going back to the QR situation, I think COVID was one of the best things that happened from the standpoint of the QR code, because everybody was so afraid of touching things. Like you can go into restaurants and everything is, you want to see our menu, it's on, scan this QR code on the table. I was in DC last week and we went to a food court. And the food court, you don't go to the individual restaurants in the food court to order. You go and you sit down at a table and there's a QR code that then pulls up all of the menus from all the different restaurants, and you order through this app and somebody brings you your food from that particular thing. And even on the Super Bowl, there was a whole commercial that was literally just a QR code for about 30 seconds that bounced around the screen for some company. I didn't scan it because I knew it was going to be some nonsense I didn't care about. But still, like, I agree. I think QR codes have really found a new place to be. And I think a lot of that is because of COVID and having fewer touch points, for people to have to deal with. I already have my phone. I'm touching my phone. Let me scan that and I get everything I need on the device I'm already touching. So, I think there's a lot of benefits to those kind of things as well.
Yeah. My last addition to that point is the post event. You're getting the email, you're getting the QR code right away, is also the emotional connection in that moment. You're capitalizing on the excitement of the person walking to their car, creating that immediate extra touch point, but they're hyped when they're leaving a concert. The line was too long inside. And so on the way to their car, though, they still have that emotional energy to make that purchase. So I think it's just another step of guiding someone to a super fan, really, is just really capitalizing on that excitement.
On top of that, because I just thought about this, I've never done it, but on top of that, if you're playing in a venue and your show is sold out well enough in advance, you should make sure your agent is getting a follow-up performance. So you can go ahead and, again, that's that partnership with that promoter, right? Our show is sold out. It went so well. Let's go ahead and make sure we get another performance on the books, and let's go ahead and sell tickets to the next show to this captive audience because they're already there. You're talking about the emotional response. You've got all your fans who are already there at that show. And why can't I see it a lot on festivals. Why can't you do it for a club show as well? Give people the opportunity to buy a ticket before it goes on. It's just like a pre-sale, but now it's a massive pre-sale. It's a pre-sale
on site. Yeah, they get it before anybody even knows about it outside of that.
That's right. So I think all of those are good technology. But again, I think that still goes back to the beginning of, like, what's the story we're telling? How are we engaging our fans? What brands are we aligning ourselves with? What's the story that we're telling, and how do we continue telling that story, which I think all of us have touched on some level.
Tim, I think you are you still there?
Yeah. I was actually just after Michael, I was about to chime in, essentially echoing, what you and Lori said, and Matt, kind of hit the nail on the head, which is, there's few things in this world that build up hype and buzz for your product than an in-person event. When people go to the show, whether it's a small showcase or whether it's a headline show that you're playing, people that sort of emotional connection that people have with your music when you're playing for them live, they're buzzing about it. They're so excited about it. I think taking it a step beyond, post show activations for selling merch or selling tickets. I've also seen really successful campaigns where artists will, target that sort of audience that was at their show with streaming messaging. Hey, hey, my fans in San Antonio, here is a playlist of music on Spotify of songs that I played this evening, from my latest album. Go stream if you liked what you heard tonight. And, you know, I've actually used this tactic before and seen a lot of success with it. You know, it's essentially taking that buzz and that hype from that show that you just played, that in-person energy, that connection that you just formed, and you know, and taking that buzz, harnessing it, and driving it back towards you know, our digital properties, back towards where people can engage in a deeper way.
And find
Yeah,
other
that's
engagement with Delta Airlines. You know, we would do contests, create a new festival, best festival won Delta tickets. You know, just doing a keynote, look under your seat, there would be a Delta certificate. We had all different kinds of promotions that we ran with Delta, and you can certainly do that at any festival as well. The element of surprise is one of the most fun things, and discovery are the two big things that people love when it comes to going to events.
Yeah, all great points. And you know, I think evidently we've provided hopefully some pretty good content here. We haven't had a ton of questions other than Jesse. So you know, thanks to everybody. We're at the top of the hour, so I don't want to keep everybody, and everybody's got probably a busy Friday. But you know, for those of you out there that have tuned in, we appreciate you being here. If you have follow-up questions, you know how to reach us over at Foundy, and I'm sure the folks here would be happy to connect with you on LinkedIn or wherever they can as well. But special thanks and shout out to Matt, Micah, and Lori for being here today, taking time out of your day. And yeah, thanks everybody for being here, and hopefully we'll do it again. This will, I think Rebecca on our team will be uploading this video recap to YouTube, if not this afternoon, sometime probably by first of next week. And stay tuned for that. If you're not signed up for our newsletters, you'll get that in an email if you are. So if you're not, then jump on and sign up. But oh, there's Rebecca. What you got for us?
Anyone who would like to watch the recap, the video will be on the registration page once it finishes processing, usually a couple hours, and then it will be up on YouTube by Monday.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Rebecca. But yeah, thanks again, everybody. We hope you have a wonderful weekend. Feel free to head over to Foundy and check out some of those tools if you're not familiar, and don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions. But other than that, we hope you have a wonderful and blessed day and a blessed weekend. Thanks for being here.
Thanks everybody.
All right.